Right, good afternoon everyone and welcome along to Postgraduate Week here at the University of Auckland, and in particular some things I'm going to talk about here at the School of Architecture and Planning. It's great to have you along. My name is Dr. Lee Beattie and I'm the Deputy Head of the School of Architecture and Planning, and I'm also the Director of the Urban Design Program, and that's what we'll sort of concentrate and talk about today. So thanks very much for coming along. Really appreciate you taking the time and coming to see what we have to offer here at the school. Just talk a little bit about who we are, what postgraduate studies about, how to go through that sort of difficult process. But we've got the lovely people from the Student Centre here to help you through that process. And then I'll talk a bit about what urban design's about, what we're trying to teach and what we're trying to get across here at the university. Talk about a little about where that can take you as a career and where I've ended up. And then we'll have a Q&A session. And just in terms of that, just use the chat section, just put up any questions you may have about as we go along, and I'll quite happily answer them as best I can as we go along. So again, thanks very much for your time, and we'll see how we go and just going about. So just to give you a bit of background, the School of Architecture and Planning is over 100 years old now, and we were the first school of architecture really founded in the country. Town planning came on board about 60 years ago, and we were the first town planning school in New Zealand. The school, or the Department of Town Planning, and the School of Architecture and Planning merged about 12 years ago to create the School of Architecture and Planning. And with that, we also have a program in urban design, which we started about 14 years ago. We're actually up to about our 200th graduate out of that program. We have about 40 permanent staff, 2 of them who are solely teaching urban design like myself, and we have about 26 in architecture, about 12 in urban planning, and we also teach heritage conservation, and that moves between the architecture and planning programs. We also have about 100 part-time staff that assist us, and a lot of those people come from practice. That's where I've come from myself, and I'll talk a lot about the opportunities you can have as a practitioner as well. But as I say, about 100 people that help us coming from practice, whether it's in architecture, urban design, urban planning, and they help us teach in both in our undergraduate and postgraduate programs. So really, really strong. It's a really important thing for us as a school to have a really good interaction with practice. In terms of planning, we have a strong relationship with the local Auckland Council and practitioners, just as we do with the Institute of Architects, Institute of Planners, and with the Urban Design Forum when it comes to urban designers. So it's a really important thing for us. And we sit within this Faculty of Creative Industries, which has other sort of creative arts that sit with us. So why would you want to come along and study with us? Well, obviously, potentially, and I've had quite a few people asked to join the program in light of where they're at financially and job things and looking up to upskill and that sort of stuff. And I would say working in the built form professional, especially in urban design, you know, you really have a strong influence in how our cities and towns evolve and designed. And that's very much at the core of what we're trying to teach here. Pick up some new skill sets, get a degree in an accredited space, like if you're doing architecture, urban planning. Urban design is not accredited because, as I've discussed, it sits between the bridge between architecture and urban planning, but we sort of sit within both of the umbrellas of those types of professional groupings, and we also have the Urban Design Forum that helps us. Improve your standing in the market. Having employed a lot of people over the years, it always does assist to have a master's degree to help you. Obviously, we would argue that we're the New Zealand's best university. We sit 152nd in the Times ranking. We went up 30 places just recently. We're the only school or the only university in New Zealand in the top 100, top 200 space in that thing. And we're also quite high in the QS rankings, which I'll talk about in a moment. Also, if you are looking to do urban design, you've come from one of the other built form professions, you may want to upskill yourself, move into that thing and specialize in urban design. Also, you could think about it leading onto a doctoral pathway, a bit like myself, come from practice, did a PhD, that type of thing, provides a whole range of different sort of opportunities. So there's that whole way of doing it at the postgraduate master level to set you up for a PhD. And we have a very strong PhD program in urban design at the school. And it's one of our most popular topics with sustainability as well. As I said, we're quite high ranked in the QS, 152nd in the Times studies. We are a unique school in the fact that we do run combined options in terms of our degrees, especially at the postgraduate level. We're the only school in Australasia that does that. It's very much following that North American model where you can have options in urban planning and urban design, architecture and urban design, or just doing urban design by itself. We also have a heritage conservation option that can sit with urban planning and architecture as well. our staff are well regarded, have a good impact in practice. We like to think we're very approachable, and we'll talk about the studio environment that's involved in the program. My studio has about 30 students max, usually around 25. Get to know everyone. We create very strong cohorts for our studio-based teaching, and that's an integral part of the overall philosophy of the school, is a design-led school with studio teaching at the core of it. We're really lucky in terms of facilities. I've done a lot of work benchmarking ourselves with other universities, especially in the Australasian space and the North American space. We have studios that other schools would really die for. So we've done very well. My colleague from architecture just walked by. I heard you just waved at, so apologies for that. But it's really, really good resources we have in terms of studio spaces. And like, for instance, Urban Design has its own studio with its own computers, and we encourage the students to be there when you can, from 7:30 in the morning to 11 o'clock at night. And that really creates that really peer-to-peer learning, and really important part of the pedagogical or teaching approaches that we use as the studios and the other resources we have, which is computer labs, 3D printing, workshops, all sorts of things that are needed to do those sort of things if you want to engage in that. Obviously, we have postgraduate advisors, and if you're in urban design, that's my role, and we can talk about that as we go along. If you want to apply, there's a picture. I love this picture. This is some of my students just drawing. Well, they're not my students, they're university students, but they're learning urban design, drawing it up and getting the old pens out. And I have to say, I'm an old school type of guy. I love getting the pen out. A lot of people, younger people, want to use computers and all those sort of programs. That's all good too, but it's still good to get the old pen out and just draw things up. And there they're working on a project there in Avondale, and looking at the potential opportunities for that. So just talking about how you go and applying. So I'll talk about that, and then we'll get into the details of what the program involves. You just choose the area of interest. You do this all online from the university's internet site, and they say there's a student centre guys there, really there to help you. And if you want to come and see them in person, they're on level 2 of the architecture building here at 26 Simon Street to help you. Choose the areas, make sure the requirements. We'll talk about that in a moment. Then you can just submit your application, and then we can just see where you're at. In terms of urban design, what we're really looking for in terms of your application is a 3-step process. Obviously, it's a postgraduate program. Your grade point average from your undergraduate degree in the built form discipline. So if you're coming from architecture, landscape architecture, urban planning, we do make exceptions, but you'd have to, from other degrees, but we'd have to have a good discussion about that. Then we're looking at a portfolio. Your understanding of urbanism is the key element of that, showing us that you understand those urban concepts. And then a written statement about why you want to become an urban designer, because I think that's really, really important for us to consider. Just working my way through some of the degrees. I'm just picking up some of the questions here. I've got a question for Irene. I'll just work my way through the questions as we're going through the presentation, which I think is all good. Is there a difference between the MArch Prof, MO Plan, the combined masters? No, they're the same thing. The combined MArch Prof and MO Plan are a combined option. They're accredited both by the Registration Board for Architecture and the NZIA, and by the NZPI. So it's a combined thing to get a degree, in, an accredited degree both in architecture and urban planning. So they're the same thing. And that's a 3-year degree option. And I've actually just put up some of the degree options that we've got up here on the slide. The Masters of Urban Design is a straight 1-year degree. Requires you to have a 4-year undergraduate degree to get into that space. That's usually, as I say, in architecture, landscape architecture, or urban planning. Masters of Architecture, we run, as I say, the conjoint masters or combined masters with architecture and urban design. That's the 2.5 years. You need a Bachelor of Architecture to get into that. We also conjoin it with the Masters of Urban Planning, which you can have any degree to get into that, as long as you meet their GPA, and you can combine that with urban design. So if you come from a discipline background that's not those built form, that could be the option for you, and that's 2.5 years. So you get the urban design element and you get the urban planning accredited stuff. Anonymous attendees asked, it's all good. What's the job climates given the, what's the job opportunity given the climates? I'm unsure to go into urban design with the combined masters. Really, really interesting. I don't know the answer to that question. I work a lot in the construction industry myself, still as a practitioner. I'll get on to what I do in practice. I work at the university, but I also work in practice. I've only seen about a 10% slowdown in the work that I'm doing, and I've been talking to a lot of people around the country. I work in Queenstown, and I work in Auckland, and I work in Whangarei, and their consenting volumes have only dropped 10%. So it's really interesting. Things seem to be kicking over and still going, and they're still employing. There's still those graduate positions. Auckland Council, even though it had, it's got its quite financial pressures, is actually employing staff in urban planning and urban design at the moment. Actually, there's 3 jobs out at the moment. So interesting to see. I can't really answer that question. It'd be interesting to see the implications of the wage subsidy ending and the mortgage holidays, what that means. But at the moment, it's not looking too bad. And I say development work seems to be continuing on. So there again, just back onto this slide, there's those three fundamental options. We option the combined master's degree. Next anonymous question, what's the workload like? Can I balance work, family and postgraduate study? Yeah, yes, you can. But I'll be honest, if you're studying full time, the university does have an expectation that's like a full-time job, that's 40 hours a week, if you like. The way we run things is a 15-point course is equivalent to 150 hours of your time, which is a mixture of contact time with staff and you doing your own self-directed learning, research, drawing, or whatever the case be. Studios are 30 points, and so that would be 300 hours of your time. A lot of the people that are studying the MURB-DES or the Masters of Urban Design are practitioners and do it part-time, and I'll talk about that. You have an option to do the Masters of Urban Design part-time over 4 years. Most people who do it part-time do it over 2.5 years. So yeah, there is always an issue about that. And it does require good post-management skills. But if you have got a job and you've got a family commitment, I'd encourage you to consider part-time study. Just moving through. Obviously, a whole heap of stuff that's available on the university's internet site. You know, all you just have to do is type in your chosen field of study and you go at the front page there and it'll just send you there. And if you type in urban design, it'll send you to all the details that I'm talking about. Another question, how strong do your design skills have to be for the application portfolio? Look, we're not teaching you to use AutoCAD, we're not teaching you to SketchUp, we're not teaching you to use Illustrator. And that's why I said this old pens, I'm a big fan of that. It's teaching you about design thinking and about value add proposition and coming up the way to create communities and thinking about that from a design point of view. What we're more interested in is your willingness to learn and your willingness to understand those urban principles that sit behind it. So don't get me wrong, we do teach and have a lot of support. If you are not good with using computer programs, a lot of support exists within the school and the faculty to get you up to skill with that. But I wouldn't see that as a barrier. We're more interested in your commitment and your understanding of urban principles, how streets work, the space between buildings, how buildings work, how open space work, how people move, all those types of things is what we're more interested in, because that's what we're going to explore with you when we get into the program. As I say, if you want to talk to me further, it's really easy. You just have to type in urban design in Auckland and it sends you straight to our internet site here at the university. And you'll find the link to my email address, or you can make an appointment and see the lovely people down at the student centre below who can help you out as well. Another question, what's the difference between urban planning and urban design? Well, I think that's a really good question. The way we sort of see it is that urban design is sort of the bridge between architecture and urban planning. And what you find is most urban designers come from either those two backgrounds, either a more architectural background or a more urban planning, town planning background. And if you think about it, architecture is that direct relationship with the object, you know, you're designing the actual thing. Urban planning is that more higher order or third order design as we talk about, that wider conceptual thing. Urban design is the space in between and how you go about community creation, thinking about the space between buildings, think about how public realms work, how do people move, all those sort of things. So it's the space between the two. And urban design, like a lot of disciplines, moves up and down between those different spatial scales. My job on the urban design panel for the council, Auckland Council, is we sometimes get very architectural and sometimes we get very subdivisional based, because subdivision, block structure, the way you construct things is a critical part of urban design, which is, you know, more on that urban planning side of things. Okay. As I say here, these are just some ideas of what you need to get into the program. I sort of talked about that for the Masters of Urban Design, as I say, coming from those built form disciplines. We'll consider people from other places if you've got engineering or surveying or something like that. But again, we just really want to have a good discussion about that. And if you're in that space, I think just have a chat and we can talk about that in another forum. But as a general principle, that's the sort of things we're looking at. Another question. Hi there. I wonder if there's any research option in the UrbDes, difference between a taught and a research program. I'll be very honest with you. It's a 1 year, it's a taught program. And it's designed to meet needs of practice. So it is a taught-based program that doesn't have the same research component because it's only a year long. In saying that, the university is looking at creating a 1 year research masters in urban design, but that will probably come on in 2022, to be honest, as subject to government approval and such like. But that's where we want to go. Another option you could think about is if you wanted to look at it more from a research space, as I say, the doctoral studies probably for you as well. As I say, that's one of our most popular topics. I actually currently have 5 doctoral students looking at a range of different things in the urban design space. So I'll just let you read this because this is recorded, and the lovely people from the Student Centre will be sending this to you anyway, so you can look at this later on, and I won't spend too much time about this. It just talks about the differences if you're applying for those combined master's degrees and such like. Question, who am I going to work for with a Masters of Urban Design degree? Just like urban planning, just like architecture, you move between governance, work at local government, private practice. A lot of our graduates go to work for the councils around New Zealand, or they go and work in private practice with the big consultancy firms, the Beckers, the GHDs, the ACOMs, those types of people of the world all have their own urban design departments to assist applicants through that process if urban design issues are required. As I say, there's a team of about 30 urban designers actually employed by Auckland Council. Wellington's got people employed, so is Christchurch, even Queenstown Lake, where I do some work for, they have their own urban designers as well. So there's a range of opportunities between governments and local government, the private sector in private practice. Just moving on. Yep, you just go through this process. I won't spend too much time on it. That's more mechanical. It just shows you how you go about applying for the process, go through the thing, and it just acknowledges that you've done that. As I say, everything's going to be done online on the university's internet site. Really, really easy process to use. Another question, are there any internships opportunity in the school for postgraduate studies? No, we don't provide as in internships per se run by the school. We tend to use our doctoral students in that tutoring space, I'll be honest. However, a lot of the pre-COVID, and it's interesting post-COVID, or we're still in COVID, let's be honest about it, Auckland Transport, for instance, is still running its graduate program. As I say, before the first lockdown, we had a lot of internships with private companies and the local government entities, as I say, Auckland Council, Auckland Transport. Auckland Transport is still running theirs. So there are more of those opportunities that exist out in the private firms and into the local government space. And we get lots of inquiries from those firms asking if we've got potential students who can work as interns or over the summer breaks and such like. Just moving on. Next question. If you've already done the compulsory paper in, let me just move this so I get this question right. And what's it say here? If you've already done, what's this one? If you've already done a compulsory, if you've already completed a compulsory Master of Urban Design paper in the 4th year of a Bachelor of, okay, yep. So those people who have a Bachelor of Urban Planning from the University of Auckland, yes, we synergise 2 of those papers. We synergise Urban Plan 707 and 712. If you've done those 2 papers, you do a research project. So that's the one option you can do that. And it's a 30-point dissertation, very similar to the dissertation or the research project you did for your honours degree in urban planning. But of course, this is just an urban design focus now. So I have 8 students at the moment doing that, running through the dissertations where they're picking up all sorts of interesting urban design topics. And of course, it's only at 30-point level, so it's not too intense. But again, you could use that as a bridge or a pathway if you wanted to into doctoral studies. Again, you can just let you pick up this at your leisure about looking about the application process. But again, I just really want to highlight how easy it is to do this online, this process. Moving on. So what do I think urban design is fundamentally about, and what would you come and study? Well, fundamentally, to me, urban design is the interface between the public and private realms. And it's the process how we can positively contribute to the public realm in our cities and towns. And it's about people and it's about community creation. It's that space between architecture and urban planning. So it's taking those wider planning ideas, bringing down the proposition to make that happen, to allow architects and landscape architects to go off and physically design the things. Really important thing, how people move, how the spaces work. And I've just put up some pictures there to a side. There's Hobsonville, which is, you know, a really interesting development from an urban design point of view. Some interesting questions about that. But in terms of design quality, range of different type of architectural styles, typologies, outcomes, is probably one of New Zealand's best examples that we've had. Really interesting project. And we do use that as with our studio program, which takes up half of the Masters of Urban Design. We always use Auckland-based examples as a laboratory for us to do. This year, we're looking at Whenuapai. What would you do with that massive site? And the council is thinking about urbanising Whenuapai. How would you go about urbanising Whenuapai? And how would that, from an urban design point of view, actually play out? Just as I said before, it's, you know, it's really important to think about subdivision layout, block structures, street layouts, urban fabric, where the open space goes, movement strategies, land use strategies, all of those things, you know, and building typologies, heights, even if that's part of a typical consenting process or it's part of something else, it's all about how those things positively contribute to the public realm and create the sort of environments we're trying to achieve at that sort of space. And that's what we're funding, in that sort of a more community level space. And as I said there, Cuspert's probably one of the leading theorists. He talks a lot about spatial political economy, that interesting thing of where urban design should sit, and that sort of understanding the social and economic impacts of design, urban design. And he talks a lot about, just as Carmona, another leading theorist, talks about urban design being the space between urban planning and architecture, just as I've said before. Next question, are there any opportunities for networks? Guest lectures from people from the profession? Yeah, very much so. There's only the two of us who teach in the program at the moment. There's just me. My fellow colleague hasn't arrived. She's coming in from overseas. So I'm teaching everything at the moment, and I've been drawing very heavily on some colleagues from practice. And we intend to continue that, and we always do that. We have, at the moment, Cobus Mentz, one of New Zealand's leading urban designers, helping me out teaching. I have Lauren White, used to be Director of Urban Design at GHD, now out on her own. She works with me in the studios, and it's a really important thing for us to bring both that theoretical stuff that we talk about, the theory, but turn to practice, because we really see as a practitioner-based program, you've got to understand what you're trying to achieve, but you've got to have those practical skills to implement it, just as practice-informed theory. So taking it from guest lectures happens all the time. We get them in for guest crits, you know, to look at your work, provide feedback. It's an integral part of the whole urban design program and experience we have here at the university. I've been really lucky in my career. I'm actually a graduate of the school. Well, it wasn't a school when I came through. I actually studied town planning here a few years ago. I'm 29 years old. No, a few years longer than that. I've been in practice for about 27 years now. And I've had a really interesting career. I've worked on projects worth over $1 billion New Zealand dollars, right down to, you know, your small mum and dad's sort of carport. So I've had a really interesting career. I've worked all around the world. I've studied overseas, and it all comes from the opportunity I've had from the university. Here, my master's degree is from London, and I study urban design at Sydney. And so I've been doing this 27 years now, not 26 years, wide range of things. I've presented evidence in all the way up to the Supreme Court. And I don't mean this in an egotistical way. It's just, these are the opportunities you get. And I work now, a lot of what I do as here at the university, I deputy at the school, run the urban design program, but I'm also actually involved in practice, where I'm a hearing commissioner, where I make decisions on resource consent applications for Auckland, Queenstown Lakes and Whangarei. Also work in private practice. I'm working on a new town centre regeneration, or brand new town centre, I should say. Can't say where it is, but somewhere down the line, a brand new town for 10,000 people. Really interesting stuff to get yourself involved in. And I'm also involved in the, as I say, a rotating chair at the Auckland Council's Urban Design Panel, where we're charged there to try and improve the design quality of the city. And it's a really interesting role. And again, that's the sort of stuff that you can get. And I'm the only actual, apart from my boss, the Dean, we're the only academics on that panel out of 45. The rest of them are all practitioners. So again, really great space to meet people. Next question. Hi, there is any scholarships available for international students? Yeah, there are some. I would go on to the scholarship site and talk to, again, those lovely people, the Student Centre can assist you with those sort of things, because I don't know the actual fine-grained details of them all, but I do know that those exist. So the university's internet site for scholarships, and again, seek some assistance from the Student Centre, from the Faculty Student Centre. Could you please describe the supervision process? Are there regular meetings with supervisors? Depends which level you're at. At the doctoral level, yes, there is, of course. I probably spend, and it depends if you're doing a doctorate, you spend a lot of time with your students at the beginning and a lot of time with your students at the end, and not so much in between over the 4 years. If you're just doing the dissertation space of the 30 points research students, I see them about once a week, go over their drafts, really just talk through the process, because it's really, really important. Because at the end of the day, I really want the students to do really well, because partly it reflects on me and reflects on Lauren, who, as I say, who teaches in the program. We're actively involved in practice. We go out there all the time. So we really want to see that our students go out there and make a positive contribution, because it does reflect on us, and it also reflects on our ability to show that we're engaging with the community. So it's a really important thing. So yep, it's a good lot of interaction, and as I say, we're pretty approachable. Lauren and myself, the new staff member I know, Ting is coming. She's pretty much worked with her before. In my other role, I'm an adjunct professor at the University of Taipei in Taiwan, and that's where I've worked with her before, and she's just as approachable as well. Next question. What if the student is outside New Zealand after all, is the degrees, right? That's a really good question. If you enroll, you're offshore, COVID's come through. At the moment, I have students in Shanghai, and I am running a parallel stream with them. And when we're all remotely teaching, it's really good, because we're all remotely teaching and I get them to join in there. When we're not remotely teaching, and we're back in the studio spaces here, because we teach a lot of, as I say, in the studios, and we tend to have a lot of our own lectures for urban design tend to take place in our own studio. We try to record them, or I run a special session for them so they don't miss out. So we're running parallel streams of the same studio, but the same stuff is taught, and we're really strong to ensure that they don't miss out if they're offshore. In terms of potentially next year, I don't know where that will land, and so I can't really comment any further than that. That's enough about me and enough about the program. I sort of said I'd talk for about half an hour. Just the final thing I'll just say about the program, 50% of it's taught courses, which is a theory course, an urban morphology course. And if you don't come from that urban planning background, you will do urban economics and you'll do sustainable urbanism. If you do come from the urban planning background, you replace that with the dissertation. That covers up for 60 points or half a year's worth of work. And the other half of the year is 2 30-point studios, and they're in each semester. The first semester studio is framework planning, those wider conceptual issues about how that plays out at an urban design level. And the second semester, which is my studio, is all about master planning, how you go about that physical creation of space and neighborhoods and things like that. How big are the roads, how tall are the buildings, where's the open space go, how are people moving, where's the shops going, all that sort of stuff, down to that detail is that. And I also teach urban morphology as well, and that's the understanding of how things change through time and how morphology can help and inform your design thinking. So do we have any, I've talked for about half an hour, I've got a session for any more questions, and I've sort of answered them as we've gone along. But is there any more questions anyone would like to ask about the program or about the school or where it sits in New Zealand? Obviously, we're based here in Auckland. We're in the centre of Auckland. If you've never been here before, we're sitting here in the architecture building. I'm sitting on the 6th floor. As you can see, I'm sitting in my office here by myself. There's no one else on the floor with me, given where we're at, but based in town, good transport linkages into here. Yeah, any other questions anyone would like to ask about the program or about the school or anything? Yep. Do postgraduate students get their own offices? No. At doctoral level, yes. If you're full-time, yes, you do. Postgraduate level, master's level, no. But in saying that, if you came in, and you're most welcome to once the building's open, and that won't be until next Monday, and you level 4, what we have is that's the urban design studio. We have a teaching space in that, and then we have spaces for 24 desks. And Usually we have about 24, as I say, maximum usually get about 30 students. We'd encourage you to use that space as your own. And what we find is, and it's really cool, students sort of colonize the desk, set up shop, and that's their desk for the rest of the year. And that's really, really cool. But, you know, that's what we've got. And I think that's, again, coming back to the resources and space that we have. And it's just a really, really lucky space we're in. If we were go to study at the University of Melbourne, for instance, the School of Design there, they don't have studios like that. They don't have any dedicated space. You're just out like you are in the rest of the university world here at Auckland. That's our really strong thing, is having those studios and those spaces where you can bond. And as I say, that peer-to-peer learning and that interaction between the cohorts of students become really, really tight over time. Are the studios shared with architecture students? Again, urban design. No, we're very, very, and the question is, are urban design studios shared with architecture, and can architecture share with urban design? No, I have to say, we're very protective of that. That's an architecture studio, that's an urban planning studio, that's an urban design studio. And that's solely so we can keep track of numbers and ensure that we offer those facilities. So we don't have urban design students who go into the architecture space. I mean, obviously see your friend and all that sort of stuff's all good, but you're not supposed to be working in there. You're supposed to be back in the urban design studio, just as if architecture or urban planning students come into that studio, and we encourage them to go back to their own studios. And because our studios are card access, only we set the cards up so only the right cohort of students can go into the studio spaces. Next question from Michael there. Do you have many MMD students coming from MM Plan working from the MM Plan, working part-time, studying part-time, or they recommend a 5th year full-time? Totally over to you. Out of that, probably out of the 30, I actually have 30 students I have in the MMDs program at the moment, probably about 15 come from an urban, 16 come from an urban planning background. Out of them, probably 8 of them have come up through the system, straight from the M-Urb Plan honours, and half of them are full-time with us, and half of them are working part-time. And I think if you go and look at the profiles that marketing have lovely just constructed for us, you've got Maya, she's come straight up through the M-Urb Plan, sorry, the Bachelor of Urban Planning with Honours program, she's doing it full-time. And you've got Charlie, who's working full-time at the council, I think in the consents department, and he's studying part-time. So it's up to you. It's really up what you want to do and how fast you want to get through the system. And you could probably even talk to them and see which ones they would recommend. I really can't answer that question. I mean, personally, I'd probably do it full-time to get it out of the way, but if you wanted to have that opportunity to earn some money, which I totally understand, maybe part-time study is just as good, because with the MODs, you've got up to 4 years, as I say, but most people usually do it in about 2.5 years. Next question, do we get many people coming in after having worked a long time? Yes, we do. We get a lot of people. It's just not people coming straight through the university system or people in their early 20s. At the moment, I probably have about a quarter of the class are probably a little bit older, shall we say. It's just, you know, and they're studying, they're retraining, they're architects, they're in plans who want to upskill themselves. I've got a few landscape architects who just want to add that extra skill set to what they've got. So about a quarter of the class, I would say, would be probably over 30. And in that sort of retraining space, you know, looking at that extra skill set they can add and looking at postgraduate study. Next question, is it common for people from other universities to join the MOD program? Yeah, most people come from, or actually, to be honest, probably 50-50. 50% of people come from here from the university, and a lot of people come from other places, whether it's Otago, Massey, Victoria, or overseas. As I say, I've got quite a few graduates. I've got 2 international students at the moment who've come from India. I've got just one international student just finished. She came from Russia. We had last year had a guy from Papua New Guinea. So it about 50-50. So I personally always encourage you, it's always good to study another space. So if you're coming from somewhere else, don't feel there's any barrier. In fact, we'd encourage you to, as I say, come to the university here and learn from a different range of people, type of thing. Any other questions we've got? Because I'm just cognizant about the time and don't want to take up too much of your time and such like. Any other questions anyone would like to ask about the program? Okay, one more. Is it possible to exchange what you're doing? Yeah, it is possible. It is possible. And no one's ever done it. Someone tried to and almost got there. And the reason why it didn't happen is because he was doing a 360 and he was going to Northwestern in Boston. Oh, sorry, Chicago, Northwestern's in Chicago. Really, really cool idea. We were happy with that. Unfortunately, they only took so amount of students, and he had, I don't know, I think it was a lottery. I'm not 100% sure, but he didn't make the set number of people. In saying that, no, I lie. In saying that, Natalia, the Russian student I was just talking about, she did a 360 exchange with the University of Sydney, which is my old school, and she was really, really keen to go and study somewhere else. And I said, you know, given the thinking of timetables and such, why don't you consider Sydney? And she went off and did half a year at the University of Sydney. So, yep, you can, very much so. Is there any specific requirements for the application portfolio? Since the B-Plan students mostly work in writing, portfolios don't say much design work. If you've got one of those Bachelor of Urban Planning with honours, think about the stuff that Kai, you know, Associate Professor Kai Goose talked about and Amelia's talked about. It's just expressing and taking those ideas that you've got in planning and then just taking in that three-dimensional graphical form. And again, it's not teaching you to be using those programs per se, it's teaching you to think in that way and think of design solutions in that way. So what we're really interested in is a commitment, and your understanding of urban principles is what we're really interested in. So don't stress out. And we have a lot of people that come from the Bachelor of Urban Planning who aren't that comfortable. But if you're not comfortable thinking about things in three-dimensional space, maybe not for you. If you're more into just writing urban planning policy and district plans or something, maybe not. But if you're more into design outcomes, how community creation actually works in a physical sense, then come and study urban design with us. Can I speak a bit more about the doctoral program? Yeah, okay. It's 4 years long. Obviously, you need to have equivalent in the University of Auckland system, second class Division 1 honours. Urban design, we're looking for people, you can come from an urban planning, architecture or landscape architecture base, 4 years long. What's really important though, when you think about the question, is to align it to the work of your supervisor. And I don't mean this in any egotistical way, but as I'm also the graduate advisor for the PhD program, because urban design is quite small, I probably get about 3 or 4 applications every 2 weeks. A lot of them, they're not aligned to what myself and the other staff members who would, potential supervisors would do. So I'd encourage you to think about a topic and think about how that would align with that person's research program. Mine's very aligned to New World Western Urbanism. I'll be honest about that. Looking at urban design panels, looking at urban design guidance in terms of creating better built form outcomes. Having said that, at the moment I've got a student looking at tourism in Queenstown, looking at what the impact of COVID meant, and also what does that mean in terms of a design response for a tourist town like Queenstown, which is a really interesting question. So there's a whole issues of economic development kicking into that as well. So it's 4 years long if you do it full time. First year is a provisional year. Go through that, you get confirmed as a candidate. Then you go through and you've got the 3 years to finish off. And as I say, most people do it in the 3 to 4 year period. And as I say, we probably in this school probably have about 45 doctoral students. About 11 of them are in urban design. So we have a strong doctoral cohort in this school. Anything else anyone would like to ask? All right. If not, all right, one last one. Do graduates get jobs overseas? Yes. Yeah. I didn't join LinkedIn. LinkedIn joined me, and I sort of updated my profile because they sort of created it for me. But seriously, the reason why I really like that is because I see all the students from around the world. We have graduates all around the world. Some who come from mainland China, for instance, go back to mainland China. We have people that come from the US, go back to the US, or people that stay. New Zealanders that go work in Europe, Asia, North America. Our degrees, especially at the university, especially in terms of urban design, architecture and urban planning, are really designed to that international space. So we get a lot of graduates that end up all around the world. So yeah, it's a really strong, especially even in Australia, you get a lot of people that go across the ditch there and work in Australia. Obviously when we can go back to doing that. So yeah, I don't know the actual percentage numbers, but it's probably around 10% at least of the students would go and work overseas. And it's very interesting to see where they end up in New York London or Shanghai or wherever the case may be. So yeah, there's a lot of graduates go overseas, and it's really good. All right, I'm just cognizant, we've been talking for 45 minutes, which is all really good, and I've really enjoyed the time. Thank you very much for the time. As I just said, this is being recorded, and the guys from marketing will contact you, send a copy of the recording, chase up any questions you have. They can help you in the first instance, or you can talk to the Student Centre guys, as I say, do that over email, or you can come and see them in person, level 2 of the architecture building, 26 Simon Street, or you can email me. My email address is al.beattie@auckland.ac.nz. If you have a sort of more sort of academic issue or query, the other guys can help you with the more sort of application process. But if you want to talk about what's in the portfolio or what we teach or stuff like that, feel free to give us a yell and I'll come back to you when I can. So on that lovely note, it's been really great to have you here. I hope that's been helpful. And I hope to see some of you later on here in the Urban Design program. So just wanted to say thank you very much. And thank you for attending. And we'll leave it there. And thanks very much for your time. Thank you.